Hello and welcome to Grey Matters, the channel that promotes the fact that the older generation still matters and which looks at issues that matter to the older generation. Now, in our last two editions we looked firstly at the proposals for the new driving licence renewals for the over 70s that were supposed to come into force last month. That's July 2025. And then we responded to literally hundreds of comments that claimed it was age discrimination and that we were being forced off the roads. So now we're into part 3 of this debate, and we know that this does matter to you because we had combined views of nearly 280,000 on those two videos. So what happens when you're over 70? And you can't renew your driving licence, and you live in an area where public transport has been decimated? Now, it's a logistical nightmare that most people never consider, and it isn't just hypothetical. It's a daily reality for many older drivers, and with the new licence renewal proposals, it could get even worse. I'm going to try and pick this apart as best I can, and in the second half of today's video I'll be sharing some shocking official statistics about the destruction of local bus services, and you won't want to miss that. Now, the blame for the decline of public transport can't be laid solely at Starmer's feet. It's been going on for ages, but the complications caused by the DVLA's licence renewal programmes can be, fairly and squarely, because it's his government departments that make the policies and put forward the proposals, and as Prime Minister the buck, as they say, stops with him. Now, losing your licence at any age can be traumatic and have huge consequences, but for older drivers those consequences can be worse, especially when transport links are inadequate or non-existent. Suddenly, simple tasks become monumental. Medical appointments, shopping, visiting family, socialising, going to the cinema, or attending clubs such as bowls clubs or yoga or lunch clubs. They will have to be limited or cancelled altogether if you can't find the transport. And that, of course, will impact on your quality of life and physical or mental health because of this isolation. And contrary to what the government and younger people think, we as a generation are flipping well entitled to some quality of life. We've earned it after all these years. And what about those still working? I mean, many part-time, many in the voluntary sector. And with the retirement age going up, people will be working longer at the same time as the DVLA is making it harder to renew your licence. Lose your licence, and without reliable and frequent public transport, you'll probably have to give up work whether you're ready to or not. And this is a problem that's been highlighted in the comments over and over again. Now, the retirement age is due to go up to 67 next year, that's 2026, and it's anticipated that it will further increase to 69 in around 2044. Which will impact on people who are in their 50s now. Now, I know it seems a long way off to them, I'm sure, but as you know as well as I, time flies. And who's to say that this government won't rush it through during the life of this Parliament? And if they do, who can say for certain that the next government will be able to repeal all this government's dreadful policies? Those retiring at 67 will have just 3 years before they will need to renew their driving licences. And we all know from Christopher Biggins' DVLA problems how intransigent the DVLA can be when they score a victory and get another 70-plus driver off the road. Yeah? Now, I'll get on to those rather shocking facts about public transport in a few minutes, but first, for those who don't know, Biggins took an eye test at Specsavers. The DVLA appointed opticians. He failed the test and had his driving licence revoked. He then appealed the decision and had 2 independent tests, one of which was at a hospital, and he passed those tests with flying colours. But the DVLA refused to accept the results. Let's take a look at this edited clip from Talk TV.
About 3 months ago, my driving license was coming to an end, so I had to apply for a new one. So I did so to DVLA, and they wrote back and said, look, you're now 76 years old. You now need to apply for an eye test, and you have to go to Specsavers. Your nearest one happened to be Stratford because it's got a special machine there. So I booked in and I went, and eventually I had my eye test, and they said, I'm afraid it didn't go quite right, so we're going to have to do it again. So I had a second eye test. So I waited for about a week, and I got a letter from the DVLA saying that I have failed my eye test. Oh, I said. So at the same time, I had another letter from Homerton Hospital, which is nearby to me, where I go for my type 2 diabetes, saying that I had passed my eye test for the next 2 years.
Right.
So I thought, that's great. So I sent that letter to DVLA, and they came back and they said, no, we don't take anything like that. So obviously they don't take hospitals, which is very interesting. Anyway, so then I went for another eye test at Vision Express in Canary Wharf, and I passed that. So I sent that letter to the DVLA, and they came back and said, no, sorry, no good. So I thought, what is it? Am I being persecuted personally here? Bizarre. And it's just, is it ageism? Is it because I'm 76? I can see perfectly.
Yeah.
I'm wearing my glasses, which are terrific. And, I'd like to know what the problem is, because, what I hear now, I've made some inquiries, that DVLA have a contract with Specsavers, and they pay them to actually be the company's firm for glasses and eye tests. So what they're doing is, for instance, what if you went when you were of a certain age to have an eye test and you didn't have a Specsavers near you?
Right.
What would happen then?
It makes no sense.
Surely they have to open themselves to all different types of eye places.
Now, my concern also, Christopher, is whether something went wrong at Specsavers, because you've had a positive eye test, a successful eye examination from the Homerton Hospital, and actually the NHS should trump any opticians. I think that's quite clear. And you've had the Vision Express positive result as well. So do you think something went wrong the day you were examined at Specsavers?
I don't know. I mean, it's a difficult one to answer.
That's just outrageous. But I suspect it will become the norm. I'm sure the conspiracy theorists out there will soon put forward the notion that Specsavers have been instructed to fail as many drivers as possible. But of course, I don't suppose there'll be any evidence forthcoming to support that. Now, many comments welcomed regular eye testing, with the sensible suggestion that they should be required for all drivers. But I don't understand why the DVLA has to have an appointed optician. No doubt we'll have to pay for these extra tests, so what's wrong with being tested by our normal opticians? I have to presume that the DVLA put this out to tender, and I can only assume that Specsavers were the cheapest, which is surprising given that the likes of Asda are so much cheaper. Maybe because their eye testing isn't as comprehensive, and Specsavers does have an advanced range of tests, but it's cheaper nonetheless. Maybe they shopped for the equipment and the tests they needed rather than price, I don't know. But eye tests aside, many viewers complained or suggested that it should be the driver's competency to drive, not medical assessments, that should determine whether the licence is renewed. And I said as much in the last video, and I would have no problem submitting to regular driving assessments. Then the medical screening that the DVLA is proposing should only then be required if the assessor determines that a driver's ability is impaired. Slow reactions, poor decision making, failing to see hazards, that kind of thing. I'm sure we all agree that no one wants drivers on the road who are incapacitated by physical or cognitive problems. Now, viewer Robin Bamv said, having my licence taken away on age grounds will present the problem of how do I get to the airfield to fly my aircraft. He's not joking. He says, to fly, I have to pass an annual medical and competence test, but there are no age barriers. And I know that to be true because there's a local pilot who didn't learn to fly till he was 80, and he successfully got his private pilot's licence. The checks and balances for private pilots are incredibly strict, because of air safety. I mean, it's paramount. Yet older people like Robin, who are deemed fit and capable of flying aircraft, could find themselves banned from the roads because the DVLA and insurance companies believe that at that age people are a huge risk. And without evidence, isn't that ageism? I mean, as I discussed in the last video, if you want to suggest that older drivers are the worst on the road and at the greatest risk, then I'm afraid the government's own figures don't back that up. Now, some were critical comments, accusing us of scaremongering, but in fact what we were doing was exploring the rationale behind the proposals, and in this edition of Grey Matters, as you've gathered, we're looking at potential consequences. A couple of comments didn't like the fact we had Starmer on the thumbnail and called us out for clickbait, saying that the driving licence renewals have nothing to do with him. But as you know, I disagree. I said at the top of this video, it's his government departments that make the policies, and as Prime Minister, the buck stops with him. Okay, let's get on to the biggest issue facing our ageing population of motorists, which is the lack of public transport alternatives should you find yourself and your licence renewal is refused. The comments we've received across our last two videos show just how many of you are seriously worried about this risk and how many of you already suffer from the appalling cutback public transport. You know, in August 2023 it was reported that 2,160 bus routes in England have been cut, leaving many communities isolated. I'm sorry that I can't comment on the situation in Scotland and Wales, but if you have some stats on those, please do comment below. In April this year, a report by the Lib Dems announced that research with the House of Commons Library shows that over 10,500 bus services had been scrapped between 2019 and 2024. 10,500. That's just phenomenal, isn't it? The .gov website states that in the year ending March of last year, 2024, there were 3.6 billion passenger journeys made by local buses in England, an increase of 7%, they said, yay, compared to the previous year. So, okay, that means demand is increasing as services are cut. Who knew that might be the result? But whilst the government is basking in increased usage, it's still less than the 4.6 billion journeys being made just 7 years earlier. Well, yeah, obviously usage was going to drop. I mean, COVID saw to that. And despite extra funding to help bus companies recover, they've still been slashing routes. These same government figures show that overall the number of bus routes have halved since 2019. It's the equivalent of losing 5 bus routes every day. Let that sink in. 5 bus routes being lost every day. Now, we've lost routes here that link large towns with smaller villages, and many people living along those routes are basically stranded. Not everyone drives. Now, if we think we've got it bad, the Lib Dem reports shows that the West Midlands has been the worst impacted, with a shocking 72% of routes cut since 2019. How is that possible? The West Midlands includes huge metropolitan areas such as Birmingham, Coventry, Dudley, Solihull, Wolverhampton, and thousands of smaller towns and villages. According to the Office of National Statistics, nearly 110,000 people use the buses in the West Midlands. Less than 29,000 use the trains, but nearly 1.4 million use cars and vans. And having lost almost all their bus routes, I'll leave it to you to work out why so many people are taken to the roads. The West Mids was followed by the North West, where they lost 52% of their bus services. Wow. I mean, the Lib Dems are urging the government to protect bus services, which they say are so vital to rural communities and families, which we know. But, you know, playing devil's advocate for a moment, bus companies are like any other business. They have to make money. And with massive hikes in the cost of fuel, wages, new vehicles, etc., and the reduction in passenger numbers, something has to go. And it would appear that what has to go are the unprofitable routes. So my immediate thought was that they should get smaller buses that are cheaper to run and maybe find ways of attracting people onto their buses, increase the number of people using them. I don't know how you do that, but there is potential good news because this month a new Transport Committee has called on the government to reform the way that local bus services are funded and adopt a national minimum level of public transport connectivity. God, I've got some mouthfuls today, haven't I? The MPs on that committee say that this will protect residents in towns and villages from becoming increasingly isolated. But you know, despite this decline of routes, buses remain the most used form of public transport in the country. I mean, not surprising really, as the only other option is to use rail services, and thanks to Dr. Beeching in the 60s, they are far and few between. They're also incredibly expensive, and they can't get you to your local high street like a bus can. These disappearing bus routes don't just affect the elderly, they affect everyone, including the young who need them to get to school, college, university, and of course their first jobs. According to this committee, denying young people these experiences denies them their life chances. And, wait for it, they're calling for a universal free bus pass for all under 22s to equalise opportunity. And that's interesting, isn't it? Given how many of us are worried about the future of the over 60s bus pass. It was only 2 years ago that the Local Government Association said that the future of local bus passes was at risk because local councils were facing a £450 million bill to prop up the National Free Bus Pass scheme. It sounds like they're blaming the older generation for that too, doesn't it? Given that information, I imagine there is more chance that the over 60s scheme will be scrapped, not extended to young people. But then, of course, maybe they'll take away our passes in favour of the young. I mean, they've got their futures ahead of them, whereas, of course, we're on the way out, aren't we? I chatted to a local resident the other day, and he was explaining to me how losing his licence for medical reasons was hard at first, until he looked at the benefits. He said he was saving hundreds a year in fuel, tax, insurance, MOTs and other running costs. He's been using his bus pass to travel to and from town, and from the money he saved, he pays for taxis when he goes what he calls proper shopping. Now, he's still left with a healthy balance each month. He had to factor in that his journeys are slower and slightly more inconvenient, but overall he claims he's been able to do everything he used to do. And that's all and well and good if you've got a reliable bus service. But I doubt many of us could afford to take taxis everywhere. Nevertheless, I feel the pain for all our worried viewers, and I do worry for the upcoming generation of pensioners, many of whom may find themselves in an even worse position when it comes to driving, losing their licences and facing whatever the issues are with public transport in the future. Now, all that said, we older people are not to be written off. And that's the whole ethos of this channel. There must be things we can do, actions we can take. One viewer has suggested that everyone who works as a volunteer should go on strike for a day to show just how much reliance is placed on our generation to keep things running, from local economies, charities, high street shops, out-of-town stores, and even the police, where many forces run volunteer schemes. It wouldn't be an easy decision for many because the nature of the services that they're providing, and of course our generation is generally committed to helping others. But I really don't believe this government has the faintest idea how much our generation still contributes to the country. I mean, what do you think we need to do to promote our worth? Do share your experiences and your suggestions and join in the debate. We truly value your input, and we do try to read all your comments. There was a great comment from Dave the Golfer, who said that members of the government can't drive anyway, and they all have chauffeurs, and the world is therefore a much safer place. He said, can you imagine the utter chaos created by all their unexpected U-turns, poor planning and slow responses? That's fantastic. Thank you, David. And that's about it for now. If you like our content, please like, share, subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. And you never know, this topic could carry on. In the meantime, thank you for joining us. And until the next time here on Grey Matters, well, it's bye for now.